Hey everybody, Seth with Everyman Prepping here. In today's video, we're going to talk about Charles Nenner and a video that he just did, an interview he just gave, and what some of his predictions are for what's coming up. So Charles is a geopolitical and cycles guy that gives out predictions, war cycles, financial cycles, geopolitical, all that stuff. He's been pretty accurate in the past. I've done videos on other interviews he's given as well in the past, and he's pretty correct. He's not always correct, but it's always good to listen to him, see what he has to say, see what we can learn, and see how we can prepare. So that's why I want to start with. And what the big thing he's talking about is we're entering a huge war cycle. That's the thumbnail picture you saw, and his predictions for how many casualties are going to be. And also, along with the huge war cycle, he's going to talk about the downfall of the American empire, basically, and we're going to get into that. So those are two big things. There's other stuff mixed in. I watched the whole interview, took some notes, and I'll pass them along to you here. But let's start. Zero Hedge did a kind of like a summary article. And don't worry about what they say about Trump. That's just to give you a click on it. But the winter coat thing will come up at the end as an analogy of how to prepare for this. But as you can see here, it says Charles Nenner warns the cycle is turning down very fast. So it's a bit of doom and gloom from this. But like I said, there's a lot to learn, I think, a lot we can use to prepare ourselves for when inevitably he says this is going to happen, and basically you can't avoid it. The guy doing the interview asked him a few times, what can we do to avoid this? What can we get around it? He's like, well, you can't. It's going to happen. But since you know it's going to happen, you plan for that. So let's get into this here. As we do, please like, comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. So he's warning of a huge war cycle that happens every 120 years or so. And that's when he came off and said, in his prediction, there will be about 2 billion casualties. He did that based on the cycles of previous wars, going back to the early wars, then World War I, II, Vietnam, and all that. And through his math calculations, whatever he does, he's coming up with about 2 billion casualties. Now, Ukraine war, we already have 500,000 there. That's just on the Ukrainian side. You got the Russian side. You have what's going on in the Middle East. So those are all part of the starting war cycle. So in his opinion, when he gets that high, he thinks a nuclear event's going to happen. Not sure he's true on that or not. Could it be just an EMP event, which would be high casualty rate also? But that's what he's saying. That's when he gets into the huge war cycle he's talking about here. And then he gets into talking a lot about the downfall of the American empire, downfall of America. And he says, as you can see in bold, I think America is lost. But it's not really a surprise, he says. He says we're being destroyed from within. And he takes that from what's happening at the southern border, the political people in charge, what they're allowing to happen, social, morals, all that stuff. And, basically saying America's destroying itself. And I don't think that you can really argue with that. That's, what a lot of us think as well, that we're being destroyed from within. And, like I mentioned earlier, the gentleman doing the interview asked him, well, can we stop it? Can we prevent it? We love the Constitution, love the country. And he was basically like, no, it's going to happen. Get ready for it. And then he went into, he says here, the Dutch ruled for 250 years, then the Spanish, then the Portuguese, then the English. He said every big society, more or less, after 250 years, ends. And I brought up I got a little chart here for you to look at. These are a bunch of the previous, empires, I guess you'd call them. It's got the dates of the rise and fall and how many years they were in power. It starts with the Assyrians, the Persians. You can see 247 years, 208. The Greeks at 231. The Romans, it's divided into two. The Roman Republic, Roman Empire, adds up about 440 years. They got 246 for Arab, all the way down here to Britain, which they have from 1700 to 1950 at 250 years. The average is about 250 years, basically. And, we're in the United States empire right now. The United States is it's the big dog. It's been leading. But as he says, we're on the way down. And so has it been 250 years? Well, if you take 1776, add 250 years to that, that's 2026. So we're at 248 years. We're right at the time frame where, Charles says nations, big societies end. So we're according to him, our cycle is over. America's ending as the top dog. We got a plan for that. Going on from that, he says, if you don't wake up, this is what you're going to get. And he's talking about Marxism and communism. He thinks that's kind of where the society is happening. And, he says about don't wake up. He also mentioned he thinks it's too late to wake up from that, and it's going to kind of happen, and we're going to have to react to it. I don't sure I believe him on that. I still think there's things to do, ways to maybe stop from going to communism. There's different things that could happen to prevent that. We can talk about that later. Then he gets into the stock market and the dollar as the reserve currency and how long that usually lasts for. And let me put up something on that. Let's check this out. This is how long reserve currencies lasted for other countries. So Portugal, they last about 75 years as a reserve currency. Spain, 110. Netherlands, 75. France, 105. UK, 110. Now, the U.S. still present is at actually 89 years. This was done in 2023. So we're now at 89 years, basically close to this average of when, reserve currencies ends. And we see that happening with the dollar getting trounced, BRICS coming in. They want to do their own currency based on commodities or gold. The fact that many countries are ditching the U.S. dollar. So yes, the U.S. dollar is dying. He thinks it's going to happen this year as well. He thinks this is the last year for the U.S. dollar. And so we need to plan accordingly for that as well. Let's see, going back to the article, I think that's all. The last thing we want to talk about is the stock market. So he's saying that the stock market is in for at least a 30% fall in the next few months. And the country will fall into a deep recession halfway through 2024. Just mentioned it was yesterday or the day before that in the video. I talked about how I also brought to you that I think a recession is coming. It is going to happen. That 10-2-year yield curve is below zero right now. He thinks it's going to be in the second half. It might be as deep as a depression. Now, this 30% that Zero Hedge wrote up, when I was listening to the whole thing myself, he mentioned that would be the S&P, taking a 30% haircut. But then he said the Dow Jones was going to go down about 50%. So that's a huge cut to, what's in the markets right now. And so what does that mean? Now, this isn't a financial advice or anything. I'm not a financial advisor, but if I was someone with money in the stock market, maybe it's time to get out. Maybe it's time to, move my money out of those assets into something else. Okay, so that was mostly the gist of what his interview was about. He also went into what to do, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I have a few more notes and points I want to go through. Then we'll talk about, well, now that we know this is happening, according to him, we can't stop it. It's going to happen. What do we do? But let's go through some other notes. One thing I have in here is Ukraine. They just ordered 50,000 new women's uniforms. They're going to start going after women to join the military. And no civilized society, no civilized country sends their women to war. It's not a misogynistic thing. It's a life of the country, a longevity of that country. Women, they stay at home, they raise the family, they raise the children, to make sure there's ongoing generations to carry on the country, because a lot of the men will perish. Women have the babies, they have the next generation. If the young women are not there to have that next generation, there won't be one, and there won't be a country. So, they're really grasping at straws when they're sending the women to war, because no country should ever do that, in my opinion, at least. What else do we have? We have here that the 13th of January, the Taiwan election is up. Right now, the separatist candidate, the one that's all for independence, is in the lead. We'll see how it goes, but it's going to get pretty dicey over there in Taiwan. They've had balloons flying over, incursions. January 13th is the big vote. We'll see what happens. That's coming up, so we got to keep an eye on that. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah. Last thing he did say, the rate cuts. Everybody's predicting rate cuts in March, April. He doesn't think they'll come until mid-June or the end. He thinks when they do start cutting them, that's when it really speeds up the death of the dollar. Inflation will happen. The stock market will get affected by it. So we'll see. He thinks rate cuts not until the last half of the year, once that recession hits, because that's how they're going to try to save it, and for the election. Because remember, we're in an election year. Crazy things are going to happen this year. So knowing this, what do you do? What do you do? And the interviewer asked him, he said, Charles, what do we do then if we can't stop it? And he gave this analogy. If it's summer, winter's coming, you get a coat. So you buy a winter coat. So he's talking about everybody needs to get a winter coat. And you can use this for yourself. What winter coat are you going to have? This is going to happen. What are you going to do to prepare? So according to him, stock market's crashing, recession's coming. So your winter coat has to be something financial. According to him, he said money is freedom. If you don't have money, you don't have freedom. So maybe your money's not in the banks. Of course, maybe it's not in the stock market. Once again, not financial advice. Do what you want. These are just things that, or opinions that something you could do. It could be precious metals stored there. Could be some people like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Could be other assets. Whatever it be, you might want to convert what you have into that so you can reconvert it out later. That's one thing for a winter coat. What else? What other do you need for a winter coat? Well, if it's recession and hard times and war, you need to be able to get to that. You have a stock pantry. You have, clothing items, repair items. You have stuff to get you through, 3 months, 6 months, a whole year. You need to be able to get, out of the system for that long, because who knows what will happen during this war cycle, financial cycle. And, because all those other countries that we listed, that came before the United States, Spain, Portugal, UK, all those that, were at the top and then fell, well, there's still very successful people in those countries. There's people very well off. There are people that came through it. There are people that, generations, their family through generations have kept going and were happy and healthy and all that. So it's not like because U.S. loses the status, the U.S. is going to go through this, that, you're going to be living, piss poor, in a dirt hut somewhere. No. You prepare accordingly. You get ready. So when you start coming out of it, you come out of it on top. And that's what you need to do. That's what the winter coat analogy is. It's summer now. It's time to prepare. Buy that winter coat, do that winter coat thing, so you're ready when winter comes. So that's all I have. Love to hear your thoughts on any of the things that he predicted, the things I showed you, what I talked about. If you go and you read the article and you watch the video and you want to come back and leave some comments, that'd be great as well. But put them down below, and we'll talk about them here. And until next time, keep your ear to the ground and head on the swivel and get that winter coat.